the first one that I want to ask about is I keep seeing this popping up again, and it's the sunstone. And I keep seeing it fucking popping up everywhere at the minute. I don't know if there's been a new documentary on it or a new article or something, but I keep seeing something shared on Facebook about this fucking sunstone.
Right. Yeah. It's not particularly likely that they use sunstones. Like, it just isn't. Like
the sunstone for anybody that's watched Vikings, the TV show, is the thing that Ragnar uses to see the sun through the clouds, and apparently it's how they navigated from Denmark, Norway to England.
Norway, right? To England, and that's how they find England. So I think there was a research article written on the possibility of whether or not they would have used these particular crystals to see the sun in cloudy weather, based off of a find, I think, is on the Scottish coast of and I believe that was an Icelandic ship from the 1300s, where they had some of those crystals on it. But there are too many layers of conjecture between that find and then the idea that people in the Viking Age may have used it. And you also have to ask yourself, how many of who are we talking about here? Are we talking about the total amount of Vikings on boats using these in a span of almost 400 years, from the 700s to sometime in the 1100s? So this was just the common technology. What about all those people in the Scandinavia who came from places and needed to go on a boat and sail from A to B, who did not have access to chopping these crystals out of a rock somewhere? That would be most of them. So it's it's a little overblown sort of idea. I think people find it fascinating because, it's a little bit of a crystal hoodoo involved. And also it sounds like some kind of deep mystical technology. It's I can tell you what they did. We can really see that on, the naming traditions that you find, along coastlines that the Vikings have been in contact with on sort of a very extensive level, so to speak. So for instance, in Scotland, Ireland, the Irish coast, the Scottish coast, and that whole area where you go down from on the west side by the Hebrides and get into the Irish Sea and everywhere. What do you find? You find so many place names that basically just signal some kind of natural feature. This is the promontory of something. That's why there's so many nesses out there, right? Or this is the Veek of this and that. That's why you got so many Veeks, right? And so on and so forth. Why? Because of navigation, right? So basically what you do is that you sail through this area and then you take note of all the important natural features that will guide you in a direction. And then when you come back to Norway, because these people are most likely Norwegians, then you tell your buddy about it, who didn't go on the trip. And you go, hey, dude, when you sail this direction, then you're first going to get to the place with the giant rock. And then you're going to get to the place with the, giant waves, or the place with the trees on the top, and so on and so forth. This is the most common way that humans have navigated across the planet, right? Basically taking note of natural features and then navigating for them. And we have descriptions of this in medieval literature. If you want to sail from Norway to southern Greenland, there's a description of how you're supposed to be seeing the Faroe Islands in the distance at a certain the water has to be at a certain level, compared to the height of the cliffs and so on. You only sail past Iceland to the extent that you like notice that there are whales and birds that will normally be closer to the shore than out at sea, right? And you want that on your right side, not your left side, because you're going west. Those kinds of things. So, you know, if these people have had like a sunstone as like some kind of technology, they probably would have fucking wrote that down somewhere, right? And been like, hey, when you go to Iceland from Western Norway, pick out your sunstone. And then you have to like look at the sun through the thingy, and then use this like weird disc in some water like Ragnar used to, and then you'll find Iceland, right? They didn't write that down. They wrote, take notice of this particular natural feature, of those birds over there, of the whale, and so on and so forth. And of course, you also know, which direction you're going when you know, for instance, that the sun is coming up behind you, then you're going west. And if when you sail at night, for instance, if you notice that the sun is coming up in front of you, then you're going back to Norway, right? So those kinds of things are much more important than the so-called sunstone. So yeah.
Was that their main navigational reference? Is the sun?
Natural features, the sun, also the placement of various stars that they're familiar with, like the North Star, for instance. They're of course familiar with constellations as well. We don't have a lot of descriptions of like, where constellations need to be and all that stuff, but the sun and moon are definitely important for them to use as well. But then you also have things like the different kinds of waves that you get depending on where you are. Like, are you far out at sea? Are you closer to land, and so on? An experienced sailor will understand how the waves function. You can even, consider such things as the smell and taste of water and so on. Like, as another component for navigation and understanding where you're at and what you have come to and so on. And as we know from plenty of stories, both current and more ancient in the North Atlantic, if you run into fog, you're fucked until the fog leaves. So that's another thing. That's like, no sunstone is going to solve that issue for you, right? But then, if you're a very experienced sailor and navigator, what you can of course do is use your nose and your taste and your ears, right, to understand what kind of waters you're in. Color of the water as well is something that will help you out too. So yeah. That's more what they've done than anything else. And then, of course, we know for a fact archaeologically that they used lead, tied on a piece of string or, a rope to, gauge the depth of the water as well.